I got a couple new guys to the chat tonight, so we're going to give it as SRSOP, give it a few minutes to get some people in here to watch, and then we'll kick this off. But this is a special live stream, specifically focusing on the Marine Corps' 246th birthday, as well as Veterans Day. So this is a special live stream edition. Every one of us in here is a veteran. Most of us are of our beloved United States Marine Corps. And then there's one oddball who can spend most of his chat telling us why he regrets in life and how he deals with the emotional stress of not joining the Marine Corps. So I'm sure that will play a key role in this live stream. So we already got 20. We'll give it a few more seconds, get a few more in here. Well, I look forward to this one, guys.
This one's going to be good.
I think
it's fun listening to Chris explain why he was in the Army, because that's all he can be.
I know, right? I hope he brought his allotment of stress cards so he can hold it up when things get too hectic for him, you know? I think he's got his glow belt on as well.
Okay, so the Marine Corps is going to get some love tonight. I mean, because it's proper. It's their birthday, and there's some good reason to share some love, but not that much love.
No, we're going to prove you can turn motivation up to 11.
For my two newcomers in the live stream tonight, if you guys look to the right, hit that little chat button, you can see people posting comments on the live stream so that you can respond to them if their comments directed to you or something you want to respond to in the panel. And you can also talk to them via text as well. So, all right. Well, we're at 32 people. That number will keep rising as time goes on. But welcome. If you're just joining the live stream, this is a special United States Marine Corps 246 birthday edition. Abra! Ah! I've got some special Marines on here tonight, and I will go around and introduce them here in a minute. But just to introduce our topics, not just talking about the Marine Corps, but it's also going to be Veterans Day. So we thought, with that being said, we invite the good doc, who is a U.S. Army veteran. But he's
There's
here.
Always one.
There's always one. So I will go around. I will introduce everybody. So no stranger to us. We got Les, aka Pegasus Test, on YouTube. Be sure to check out his YouTube channel. He was a Marine in the early 90s. He's a veteran of the Gulf War, and he's also a black hat instructor with me up at the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. Again, check out his channel, Pegasus Test. He does a lot of tactical-oriented content, and he is no stranger to this live stream. Moving on. We got Nathan Schomer. He is a first time on the Brent0331 live stream. Nathan Schomer is a veteran, a United States Marine Corps, served with me in 2003 and 2004 in the initial invasion in Iraq and in the battle in the Najaf. And we served together in Bravo 1-4. Good friend of mine, combat friend. And he went on to become a drill instructor before finally leaving the Marine Corps after 8 years. 8 years. He also right now is a dog trainer. He's had his own show on Animal Planet, so he's kind of a big deal. So he's a good friend of mine, and again, I welcome him to the live stream. Moving on, we got Chad. Chad's a good buddy of mine. We served together in Bravo 123. We deployed together to Afghanistan in 2010, 2011 time frame. And Chad is a combat veteran. He served at 1st LAR in the Iraq invasion in 2003. He also served in Fallujah in 2004 before we linked up together in 2006 in Bravo 123. So he's a hell of a motivator, a war fighter, and I'm glad to have him on for this special Marine Corps birthday edition. And last but not least, we got the good Doc. Doc is a U.S. Army veteran. Yeah. But we're glad to have him on a celebration of Veterans Day. He is an accomplished author. He's also a veteran of Korea, essentially the silent war. And I don't mean the Korea that was fought in the 1950s. I mean the Korean War that took place after the armistice was signed and lasted all the way up to essentially current time now. but he's an accomplished author. He's written many books specifically on small unit tactics. He's the original founder of the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. He's just a wealth of knowledge, and always a pleasure of having him on the live stream. So with that being said, guys, not only do I have to change the title to this live stream because I forgot to do that, but I want to go ahead and start this off. We're going to go around the horn, and I want to start with Pegasus test, Les, and I want you guys to talk about why you joined specifically the U.S. military, or the United States Marine Corps and U.S. Army for the good doc here. But let's start with Les, man. You pick it up.
Well, I was kind of like heavily indoctrinated. Back in 1982, a cousin of mine became one of the crew chiefs on Marine One, and his wife was on the editorial staff of Leatherneck magazine. So I got a full batch of indoctrination at a very young age. So it was just natural to want to be in the Marine Corps when time came. Also, growing up in the Florida Keys, not a lot of opportunities there. So the Corps was definitely a way to go see the world.
All right, let me unmute it. All right, so I decided to join the Marine Corps, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I wasn't the most stellar student as I was going through school, and I did not do a really great job. So I had a couple options: either go out and do nothing with my life or join the military. And I didn't really look at any of the other branches. In fact, I didn't. I just knew that Marine Corps was the best. At least that was my perception of it. The Marine Corps has the toughest, most hardened, disciplined troops, and that's what I want to be a part of. I've seen awesome videos, I've seen the cool billboards, and I knew that that would give me the stepping stone that I would need in order to be successful within my life, since I didn't make the right decisions when I was in high school, always getting in trouble, ditching class, et cetera, et cetera. So I can go on about that, but the Marine Corps definitely was the best choice I ever made in my life, as far as giving me structure, giving me discipline, and not only giving me the ambition to do things when I got out, but the confidence to do those things as well. Because I'll tell you what, after you've done a couple combat deployments and you're a drill instructor, everything else becomes easy after that.
So why the Marine Corps? Nobody's mentioned the uniforms yet. I'm kind of surprised. I mean, dress blue, that's some sexy uniform right there. I mean, come on.
Fanny droppers.
Going back to what Les said, I didn't really have any indoctrination, but I guess I did kind of. I grew up watching G.I. Joe and stuff like that, and kind of enjoyed going out in the woods, rolling around in the dirt and stuff like that. What attracted me about the Marine Corps is it is the hardest branch of the service. It's definitely the most physically and mentally demanding. We have the highest PFT, the hardest PFT, and with the incorporation of the new CFT, I would say we're still up there. So I wanted to accomplish something hard, and that's why I did. I enlisted the Marine Corps, wanted to be in the infantry. I scored high enough on my ASVAB where I could have got anything. They offered me counter intel, but I said no. I want to go in the infantry and shoot stuff and blow stuff up. So that's what I did.
So I did not join the Marine Corps, but and it's funny because when I was first joining, that's when I really became aware of that there was a rub between the different services, and it's a friendly rub. It's, it's a fraternal rub, but I didn't really understand or appreciate that. I grew up an Army brat. My family, the Larsens, are Vikings. That they're nomadic. They went from one war to another, came over here in the United States in the late 1800s to avoid a German draft. They didn't want to fight for the Germans. And so they wound up fighting against the Germans for the next two world wars. And I just come from a long, long line of warriors, and mostly NCOs, mostly Army, mostly infantry. And so I think my father, 3 tours of Vietnam, 20-year career man in the Army, and he tried to talk my brothers and I out, big Catholic family. He tried to talk us out of it. And I think at one point he may have actually done that. But somewhere around the age of 12, this is going to sound really ass backwards, somewhere around the age of 12, I came to the realization that I was a pacifist, not making a joke at all, that violence offended me. Its use as a means of coercion offended me. And in that same realization, I realized, oh, well, I'm a pacifist, but I'm not a coward, so I have to serve. And I never really thought of anything else. I had Green Beret uncles and, my father and, just all these different people who'd served, cousins who'd served in the infantry. And it just seemed, well, that's where you got to go. And so you got to understand, this is 1985. And the bean counters in the 1970s had been looking at the Soviet Union saying, well, they're spending 26% of gross domestic product on the military. No one can do that. They'll be out of money by 1980. And we're going to have World War III, and they're going to invade. Soviet Union is going to have to use its incredible forces in the Fulda Gap and invade Europe, Germany and all this other stuff. And it didn't happen by 1980, but by 1985, we were convinced the war was going to happen any time. And so my mother, she was an Army wife, and so she knew what was up, and she knew that the Soviet Union wasn't just going to go meekly into, financial, they just weren't going to go away meekly, which is exactly what they did 5 years later. But no one could see that. We all knew we were going to war. We all knew that it was going to be a nuclear war. And so she was trying to talk me out of it just a couple of days before I left for the Army. And I had to turn to her and say, Mom, you didn't raise me to be that kind of son. You didn't raise me to sit back and let other mothers' sons go to the military and die for me. So I'm going. And off I went. And it was a very somber, it wasn't like high five. It wasn't my style. It's not what I believed. My mother and father deeply regretted the fact that I went, and my brothers went with me. But we did. And I have never regretted serving. I've never regretted serving my nation, and we'll go over this a little later, and I'll poke fun at the Army because soldiers aren't proud of the Army at all, to my knowledge. I'm certainly not. We are fiercely proud of our regiments, and that certainly is true for me. So that's why I went in, and do I regret it? No, not at all. Best 8 years of my life. 9 years actually, and I do recommend that sort of sacrifice to any man capable of making it.
Well said.
Yeah, well said, Doc. So my story. So as a young man, I grew up watching Red Dawn, and another movie that sticks out in my mind was the Green Beret.
That's not a documentary, right, Brent?
Yeah. So I grew up with the expectation that I was going to be fighting communism. And that was kind of my life path. And after watching Green Berets, I was dead set on, becoming a Special Forces Green Beret and, fighting communism that way. And then I saw the Siege of Firebase Gloria and Lee Ermey taking control of a bunch of nasty Army and holding that firebase against waves of enemy MVA and VC. And he was a Marine. I think they said Master Gunnery Sergeant in that movie, but that kind of steered me towards the right direction. And then I joined a program called the Young Marines, which was out of Tustin, California at the time. And, they pretty much solidified that to orient me in the right direction. So enlisted in the Marine Corps out of Texas. And I have no regrets still serving in a reserve capacity. And here we are about to hit my 20-year mark. And man, it has just been amazing. And I'm fortunate enough. I've got 2 guys in here that I served with, blood, sweat, and tears over in foreign lands, and have no regrets. 03 all the way, baby. So with that being said, guys, let's open it up. This is a special edition, Veterans Day edition / Marine Corps Birthday edition. Let's kick this around. What is the U.S. military in terms of your service provided you in life? Let's go over to you, Les.
Well, easy. I'm literally the poster. I went in, I got a skill, and now I'm one of the owners of a successful logistics company employing 80 people. I literally did what the poster said to do. So that, in a nutshell, that's it. You can talk about all the other qualities you get, discipline and powering through tough times, focus and attention to detail. But literally, it gave me my career.
I'll jump in and say the same thing, that, and I didn't even realize this till years later when someone pointed out, but I'm kind of the poster child on the flip side. I never thought I was going to go to college, went into the Army, and then got out and used the GI Bill, and then kept going for one reason or for another, kept going back until I wind up picking up my PhD. And it's very, very much the Army that got me started down that path. Never would have done that had I not served in the military. I wouldn't have had the means. I wouldn't have had the financial means. Coming from a Catholic family of 1,400 children, there's no way that my mother and father could have afforded, because I was like probably in the second litter of like 8. And so no, I wouldn't have had the means to go to the military or go to college like I did. And so they very much sent me down there, and it started me into a career of sucking off of the government tit.
Well, I heard Brent say something about.
Well, at least you're honest about it.
I heard Brent saying something about you've written a few books. How many books did you say that you have written?
Whoa. How many books have I written? I mean, if you're not going to go like second and third editions, I think I have 6 titles out to my name so far, like actual military tactics. I assume you don't want to go into my research or anything like that. Like,
I mean, if you can, I'd definitely order some books. I've been trying to order, so I'm fascinated personally in history, especially history within the United States, the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the battle at Fort Henry, I think it was, where the Star-Spangled Banner was written, all these really cool things. And while I was reading this book on George Washington, it's called The First Conspiracy for anybody who's interested. Phenomenal book, incredible. I also read The Lincoln Conspiracy, equally as good. But anyways, reading it, I became even more fascinated in George Washington. And when he earned the position of commander-in-chief to lead the Patriots, or the what's the other word that they use, the Continental Army, up against the British forces, he started studying all these books on military tactics. And they were written in there, and I was like, awesome, I'm going to get these, and I'm going to learn about what George Washington studied that helped him overcome this incredible challenge of the Revolutionary War. And I ordered them, and they showed up, and you couldn't even read it. It was like whoever sold it was printing it. Like, it was terrible.
oh,
So definitely in the market for reading some books on military tactics. I think it's fascinating. And what we were talking about earlier, Brent, with different movies and how we observe them as veterans and what we think about them, just history in general for me has been such a huge passion. So then adding more about military tactics, it gives you a different perspective of it. Because, for example, you've seen a lot, Brent, going from, back when we were privates all the way up now to first sergeant, possibly sergeant major soon, who knows? So your experience, you've seen so many different things throughout that, from being the one being told what to do to now being in the position of telling others what to do and be in charge of the bigger picture, which I think a lot of the military tactics would be about, that big picture and how do you coordinate such big units. Another book I'm reading right now is The Personal Memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant. And I'm right now at the point of the book where it's the Mexican-American War that we were involved in. So I haven't quite gotten to the point yet where he's leading and taking charge of the Union up against the Confederates during the Civil War. But anyways, now I'm going on a tangent because I can start talking about this stuff forever. But yeah, you're going to have to give me some links so I can order your books.
Sure. So if you don't mind responding to that, first off, yeah, I wound up getting a minor in history, and I think any warrior scholar is just going to wind up being a history buff. You can't. There's no getting around it. You're not building new stuff. You don't have any original thought. What you're doing is you're standing on the shoulders of giants and pretending that you're tall. Like a little kid. But you have to recognize those giants that went before you. And so yeah, I mean, no big surprise. I'm going to say Jomini. I'm going to say Clausewitz. I'm going to say Sun Tzu. These sort of people. But what I wound up specializing in, almost by accident, were modern So modern incantations of small unit tactics. So I write pretty extensively on Blue 4, that is United States doctrine. I write on guerrilla and insurgent, what's now colloquially called the full spectrum or a hybrid threat. So I also write on in terrorism and crime cartels. So it gets to that level. But my big thing is trying to understand. And so I've written pretty extensively on the Soviet doctrine, what's now colloquially called Red Team Army. And so there are books all over this. So the three big ones are through my big sellers are through the Lightning Press, which of course produces the Smart Book Tactics or Smart Book series. And the Smart Book series got its start with the Battle Staff Smart Book and Leadership Smart Book. I write, and there's 26 titles in that series. I write several of them, which are Small Unit Tactics, the Sut Smart Book, and the Sut Smart Book is their second bestseller in the entire series. I also write Red Team Army, which is Op 4.3, and I write the Hybrid Threat, which is Op 4.2. So I'm writing, again, the opposing force doctrine as well. Any small unit tactics, that's what I write for the Lightning Press.
That's incredible, incredibly fascinating as well. It makes me think, Brent, have you ever thought of writing a book about your experiences in the Marine Corps since you've been doing it for so long now?
Good question.
Yeah, no, maybe after all this. I want to jump to Chad though, because he hasn't said what the Marine Corps has done to him. And I think when I talked to him the other day, he told me that he was working on his doctorate, right, in military history.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yes, I am. So it's good to have another scholar on board here. I actually just finished my second master's degree. I got my master's degree in irregular warfare from American Military University. That was an interesting program. So did you write that book, Light Infantry Test for Small Teams?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I've got it. I actually have it. I haven't read it yet, but I do have it. I've got a mountain of books on this wall right here that I'm actually staring at that I've got to get to. But that's interesting. It's nice to put a face with an author. But anyway, back to the question. What has the Marine Corps done for me? I think it's given me a sense of tenacity. There isn't really any challenge that I haven't met in the civilian world that I can't conquer. I've been up on my luck and I've been down on my luck over the past decade, and there isn't anything that I can't handle because of the challenges that I went through. Starting at boot camp, going through SOI, and that there isn't anything I can't, and that's given me that tenacity to challenge everything. So that's what, to answer your question, that's what the Corps done for me.
That's an excellent point, Dad. I'm saying outside of academia, outside of business and academic pursuits, I think you're right. It's grit, right? And I'm not going to speak. It would be a lot of fun right now to pick on the Navy, the sailors and the airmen, but they're not here to defend themselves, so I kind of feel like that's a cheap shot. But I will say that certainly the Army and the Navy, and I suspect all four branches, they give you, it may be a different kind of environment. Air Force tend to, it's true grit getting through the day without your soft serve ice cream. And so I think that's it. Honestly, all kidding aside, I think that's what the military service does. Is it says, okay, we're going to teach you how. We're going to teach you how. We're going to give you. You're going to learn through the School of Hard Knocks about grit, the intestinal fortitude to get through, the shitty aspects of life, and to hang on and keep fighting. Right? That's well said.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I want to say, we rib each other, obviously, but it's all one team, one fight here. And, I know all the Marines in here, at least, we've all served with some outstanding sailors who are corpsmen, and even going on warships, LPDs, specifically for Nate and I, those are fine sailors operating those vessels, getting us to the fight, because that's very important. If we can't get to the fight, then there ain't going to be any commies to kill. So,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, definitely. And everyone, of course, is necessary. Something that I've really noticed personally, I'm kind of curious to see if you guys have seen the same thing, is especially with the top 10% of those in the military, but even the remainder 90%, there's still a percentage of this. If you've studied anything on Stoic philosophy, like Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus, or some of these people, even early on, or even during the Renaissance era, but the concept of the Stoic philosophy is, even if it sucks, you do it anyway. If it's going to help somebody else, you do it anyway. If not now, when? If not me, who? This whole kind of concept, which I see from a lot of people that were in the military, even if they don't know that they're following this kind of Stoic type philosophy, they're doing it naturally from what they learned while they were in the military. And like we were saying, you think about it, it's like you can really enjoy the best times when you've gone through the worst times. It's something, the story that I used to tell people, because it puts into perspective of also living in the moment in a sense. This was when we were out in Iraq. This was our first deployment. I was with motivated First Sergeant Downing. And at the time, he was Lance Corporal, I believe. I was rocking the PFC, one stripe up, nothing underneath. And we dug in our fighting position. We were only getting one MRE a day because the supply lines have been hit. We're hungry, we're tired, we're disgruntled. We haven't gotten in a fight in a while, so we have that itching at us as well. Everyone's saying no war, 1-4. So we're like, what are we doing out here? And then I had a chance I snuck off. So I kind of got in trouble because I got caught. But I snuck off and I went to the Amtrak. And I remember I knocked on the Amtrak door. The Amtrak guys opened the door. I can't talk right now. And they're reservists. So they're way more relaxed than some of our infantry senior Marines were. And they said, hey, come on in. You want a cup of coffee? I said, yeah, I would love a cup of coffee. I pulled out my canteen cup, haven't washed it from the last time I shaved out of it. And they poured me the cup of coffee. And then I also had a pack of cocoa powder in my pocket. I pulled that out, poured it in. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I remember sitting there and enjoying every moment of it so much, because everything before it and everything after it I knew was going to suck because of what we had to do, digging the fighting holes. There were certain times I remember we're running around and it's 100 and whatever degrees outside. We're dying, we're dehydrated. One of our mutual buddies asked motivated Downing over here, hey, can you hold my canteen? Or not canteen, ammo can. So he grabs the ammo can and he's running. He's like, all right, you got to take this back, dude. The guy takes it back. He's like, oh, you saved my life. Oh, thank you so much. But that misery, and then when you're outside of it, to what I forget who was saying it earlier, but it just makes everything else so much easier. And then you think about that. I think Chad was saying it. You go, okay, if I could do that, getting up in the morning to go to this meeting, that's cake. I'll do that all day. It just puts it into perspective, which I think is a big part of just the military in general, besides, of course, the camaraderie. Like doing this right now. Brent hits me up the other day, leaves me a voicemail talking shit, and I laugh my ass off. I'm like, I love that. That's the type of stuff that I miss, and that's what's so great about the military.
Well said.
And I gotta add that those AAV crewmen were from Galveston, Texas, and when they arrived, we were under the expectation, because we thought that the war was going to kick off before the AAVs got there. So we were literally in the process of hardening 7-ton trucks. They had built these shelves to hold sandbags to harden these suckers up, because we were going to ride them for the invasion of Iraq. And we're like, we're supposed to have AAVs. And I remember out there, Nate and I are like filling sandbags, and you see off in the distance this little cloud of dust, and it got closer and closer. And then once it came into visual view, that lead track had a big ass Texas flag on it. They were like, fuck yeah, those are our trackers. It was awesome. But yeah, they were reservists out of Galveston. And I remember there was like 40-year-old Lance Corporals in that group.
Wow.
A bunch of motivators.
Yeah.
That makes sense. When I was a drill instructor, when I was a senior drill instructor, I don't know, I think I may have told you this, Brent, I'm not quite sure, but I would use stories of Brent to my recruits to get them motivated, to get them pumped up. I would tell them stories. I'm like, this guy was the real life Rambo. I mean, I'm telling you, when we were in a fight, there's a lot of guys who would go out there and say, I want to get into this fight. I want to go out there. But when the shit hits the fan, they're not as motivated as they claim to be in the beginning. But not Downing. When that shit hit the fan, he was the first one running full speed, looking back at the rest of us dragging our asses, going, let's go, come on. We're like, oh, geez, I can't keep up with you. This is ridiculous. One time he was like 20 yards in front of me. I'm like, I can't, dude, slow down, please, for a minute. Let us catch up. But like that gun-ho mentality, nothing stopping, motivated Downing. I was even reminding him of a story earlier when we first had our first contact. I remember I looked up because we were doing training operations before that. And I remember Brent looked at me and he goes, man, I can't wait till this is real. And I was like, all right, cool. And so then we're over and we had a contact left. We get down. Brent's on the machine gun, I think. I don't remember very clearly. But I do remember the gunfire's going off and he looks at me like we're doing this. It's finally happening. My dream has come true. But yeah, sorry, I had to throw that random story in there. Hope it doesn't embarrass you, anybody. I mean, I did get my butt kicked quite a bit too. I think you were talking about that earlier. I don't know if we were live yet, but all the fighting that we used to do, I think we had like an agreement too. If we see each other outside of training, we have to fight. Do that every single time too. But sorry, I want to pass the mic to somebody else.
Yeah.
That's the Army and the Marine Corps.
What, the constant fighting?
Oh, absolutely. It's how you say hello.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I'm assuming you were in a good amount of fights back in the day when you were in, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a barracks thing, how you settled problems, Marines fight. It's just a fact of life. And bleeding was okay long as nobody broke anything. That included furniture, arms, legs. Long as you didn't have to go to the BAS, if you could get Doc to fix you up in the barracks, everything was good.
Heck yeah, good old barracks docs. I actually have a story of that once where I got way too intoxicated.
Yeah.
And I remember I started coming
In
out
the
of
barracks? No.
Yeah, who would have thought? And then I hear a bunch of people coming in. I hear one of the corpsmen, and he goes, oh shit, this man needs an IV. And then I feel him giving me an IV, and then I swear, like an hour later, I was good to go again.
Yeah,
We lost someone.
we could talk for hours about Nate's stories. I mean, we had to hold him up, one Marine on each side in formation one time. That'll be a story for another day.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Chad, man, I'm trying to remember. Were you in the initial invasion, or did you get there right after the push?
No, I was in the invasion. I was a Lance Corporal in the invasion.
Okay, in LAV 25, right?
LAV 25. I was in first LAR.
Yeah.
03 Motor T.
Dude, you guys wasted so much. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Yeah. I remember in Fallujah, an Army MP unit that we were attached with, and they had some very strict ROEs, and they're driving down whatever the main MSR was in Fallujah. I don't recall the name of it. It just happened, Army MP unit, and there's a truck parked over on the side of the road, and because of their ROEs, they couldn't engage, but they figured it was an IED, a V-bed, and so they just flagged down. We just shot it up, and just stuff like that. You remember memories fondly, but that also illustrates kind of the difference between the Marine Corps and the Army. Not but jabbed in.
Hey Doc, I feel like you need your flak and Kevlar on. You're probably gonna take some rounds tonight.
It's all good. It's all good. It's actually what's kind of surprising is how much, like, when you guys talk about it, I know guys by like the names, not just the faces, the names. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. But I got to be honest, it wasn't me though. I was like one of those guys who sat back and went, these dudes are a little weird, man. They're just like pummeling each other till they bleed. I'm like, yeah, all right, you knock yourself out, guys. But yeah, there's that. And I don't know. I mean, like that last comment, there were times where I found the Army was, certain regiments were real hesitant to shoot, and that worked out well for them, or did not. And then to be honest, I was, I'm talking Army. I was on the other side. I was out there by Bakuba. And, there were certain Army units that were real quick to shoot. And I'm even talking not just MP, I'm talking infantry and Bradleys with that 25 mic. And we cleaned up their mess a couple of times. So, times where I thought, all right, you got the bad guy, but you got a lot more than the bad guy, Actually, you got both bad guys, but there were some messes there. And I thought, oh, you guys should have known better than that. So I don't know. Sometimes you get away with it and sometimes you don't, right?
Absolutely. And are we going to, because I know you said earlier, maybe I'm jumping the gun on this, but you wanted to talk a little bit about certain military movies and how veterans feel about them, or what our perspective is on that. Was that something, or am I jumping the gun?
We can jump into that. I'm sure we got endless topics. So if you guys relate to the topic introduction, one of the things we want to cover, and I'll preface this, how this all came about. So recently, Bruce and I posted a video about LERP, uniforms, weapons, and gear during the Vietnam War. And Chris came on and posted a comment about, because we said there's not very many movies out there about LERPs in Vietnam, and there should be. They played a huge role in that war, and they're unsung heroes in my opinion. They did so much. But is it Charlie Mopek 84 or 68 or something like that?
Yeah, 84 Charlie Mopek.
84 Charlie Mopek, and that was the one. That was the one that I thought of when we brought up the whole, like, there aren't very many movies about these guys. And Chris posted on there. He's like, "Yeah, there's this movie, and it's, check it out. It was guided by a couple of Vietnam LERPs and somebody went on there and said, hey, I think he's like, my uncle was a LERP, and he said that movie was garbage and everything else." And then Chris came back and he's like, I'm paraphrasing this obviously, but essentially what he was saying is veterans don't like to watch movies about their war. And when I read that, I said, man, that is 100% accurate. 100%. I love movies about Vietnam, Korea, World War II, World War I, Revolutionary War, Civil War. I love those movies. I watch them all the time. I read into history about them. Obviously, look at my YouTube channel and see how many like historical videos that have populated on my channel. How many GWAT videos have we done? Big zero. I've talked once about the gear we carried there, but that was it. And it's not that I don't know. Maybe there's something underlying for that for me. I just don't have any interest in that. And I don't watch, I don't typically watch stuff about the GWAT on TV. I'd rather turn the channel and go to the other military history channel that talks about Iwo Jima. So I think there's something underlying about that, because when Chris said that, I said, well, I'm not the only one. Yeah. So I want to kick it over to Les, and let's go around the horn if you guys feel the same way.
Absolutely, I feel the same way. As being a Desert Storm veteran, the only Desert Storm movie I've seen is that silly-ass one where Meg Ryan supposedly wins the first female to win the Medal of Honor and all that. And the only reason I even saw that movie is the company I was working for at the time, my manager saw it in the movie theater, thought it was great, and thought he was doing this great thing by taking me out to the movie to see it. Mm-hmm. And I sat and grinned through it politely and everything, but never seen Three Kings, never seen Jarhead, no desire to. And I've even found that movies after that are hard to watch. The only post-Desert Storm thing I've watched that I'm really into is Generation Kill. And the only reason for that is it's not so much we're invading and having these fight scenes. It's a bunch of jarheads being jarheads. And we've all done the crazy ass shit they do in there. And we've all covered for each other during the crazy ass shit. And we've pulled the shenanigans they pull in there. And, it's kind of reliving old times. But you could have made that a World War II movie. You could have made it a Vietnam series, and it'd be the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's not so much that it's the invasion of Iraq that matters. Movies since then, like American Sniper or Lone Survivor, I've seen them because my kids wanted to see them, and wife's going, well, you need to go with them and you need to talk about that with them when it's over. It's like, so I sat through them, and they're not horrible movies, but they're not for me. I don't need to go see them again. And when a new movie comes out post Desert Storm, it's not something that's on my list. I got to get to the theater and see. But the classic World War II movies, oh yeah, I'm all about that. Some of our classic Vietnam movies, I can watch John Wayne, the Green Berets, like 1,000 times a day because it's just an awesome movie because John Wayne's in it, of course. But yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you, Brent. Same thing. It's like, it's hard to watch movies about your war because I think our experiences in the war are so intense and personal to us that anything they get wrong in the movie just is kind of like sandpaper on your ass.
What you got, Nate?
Yeah, and for me, entertainment aside, because a lot of times, of course, for the general public or people that haven't been in the military, they want to see things that are entertaining, that are well made, that are engaging for the audience. When it comes to watching anything that is supposed to be historical, I appreciate accuracy. The problem with movies that are depicting things that we have personally been a part of, we're able to pick out all the flaws in it. And I think that can become distracting to learning and being entertained by what it is that you're watching. Because even though we were involved with Operation Iraqi Freedom or Desert Storm, or even veterans that are still alive from the Vietnam War, it's not so much the act of watching it, but the inability for the production companies to portray it as accurately as possible. Because when you start to see the flaws, it pulls you out of that immersion into the story. So I really care about the historical accuracy of things. So when I watch a movie or I watch a show, I'll research how historically accurate it is. All military stuff. So, for example, Outlaw King came out a few years back, I think 2018 or 2019. This is about the Scottish rebellion up against the English Empire. And it's actually pretty historically accurate. Same thing with like the show Vikings on the History Channel. That is actually pretty historically accurate based on the documents that they have. And then also looking back at even documentaries. A documentary that I absolutely love that I recommend to everybody is the documentary titled They Shall Not Grow Old. It's the Western during World War I. And it's footage for me. I really feel for the guys in the video because I could visualize myself being there. Because they remastered the footage, they added frames so it moves the speed that it's supposed to according to the appropriate frame rate. And it's mind-blowing what they did. And then they also hired actors and people who are good at reading lip movements to get them to say and act out what these people may have been saying during that time. And it takes you back to that time in history. So for me, it's really about experiencing things that I wasn't directly part of, because when you are choosing one thing, if you're saying yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. So I feel like I know a good amount about, at least from being on the ground, maybe not the entire overall picture of Operation Iraqi Freedom or Operation Iraqi Freedom 2 or the Afghanistan War, maybe not the big picture, but what I saw when I was there. So again, I like to look back and, like you said, Brent, see those movies on Vietnam, and I can critique it maybe a little bit from what I know from the military, but I can't critique certain things that I may not have known what would have been experienced during that time. A good example is the Mexican-American War. I said earlier I was reading about Ulysses S. Grant and his personal memoirs, and I was telling my girlfriend about it. I'm like, what's so fascinating about reading from the perspective of a general that was there, even though he was a lieutenant during that time, is things that you wouldn't think about. Because like if you read a history book, it tells you really like the big picture. But he was telling a story about how they had to have mules and they had to load the mules up in order to transport things like their cannons and their equipment and tents. And he's like, by the time we were done loading the mules, the ones that were loaded in the beginning were trying to get the gear off because they had the gear on for the past 2 hours. Like that to me is incredible, because I would have never thought about the use of mules because we've had Amtraks. So to think about the differences and looking back, for me, that's what's really quite fascinating. If they make a good movie, on the stuff that we've done and we participated in. I would like to see it, to see how accurate it is. Just like I was saying earlier, they're making a game right now called, I believe, 7 Days in Fallujah. And it's supposed to be pretty accurate based on what we've seen. And they've had guys who fought during Fallujah tell them and kind of guide them what to do to make sure it was as accurate as possible. And to, of course, respect the veterans that were there during that time. Because we were Operation Phantom Shield, right? I think we were that, right, Brent? Operation Phantom Shield?
No. Sorry, I was replying to somebody asking about all the Marine Corps units celebrating balls, and I was like, "Oh, we just had ours." It was unit dependent.
I threw you off. Well, when the troops were going into Fallujah, that was Operation Phantom Fury, right?
Yeah, Phantom Fury.
Yes.
That's what.
And I thought we were Operation Phantom Shield or something like that.
And Najaf?
Outside of Fallujah, because when that was going on, we were in Abu Ghraib.
Yeah. I don't know if we had a specific operation name for our deal.
But anyways, I took a simple question and I answered it with the most ridiculously long answer ever. I love military movies. I love history. So if they make it well and they make it accurate, I'm gonna watch it.
Hey, you and Chris can have a great conversation sometime if you have a 24-hour block sectioned off.
Oh yeah, man, I can talk history all day. All right, so who's next?
I'll go next. So this is interesting. I didn't know about this video game until you actually mentioned it. Since I was in, and this kind of ties into the question. I would really have no interest in playing it. And I think something I didn't hear anybody else mention, but something that I feel personally is I feel very humble about my service. I don't want a parade. I don't want to be acknowledged. When people say thank you for your service, sometimes I find it very awkward. I don't know how to reply to it. I just say appreciate it or something like that. But I didn't want a parade for what I did. And watching movies, playing video games, stuff like that, it's kind of a parade for what we did. And I don't feel that, I need something like that. So that's kind of why I agree with you, Brent. I don't watch movies about or TV shows about GWAT myself. Love all the other stuff. Full Metal Jacket was awesome, especially the first part. But I don't really need to relive that experience. Like you guys, I'd probably sit there and pick out detail. That's not how it is. That's not how it is. That's not how it was. And I'd spend most of the movie in something like that. So it's not really necessary, I think, to watch anything like that because we've all lived it. We don't need to see it again.
And I could agree with that. However, if you ever wanted to, like, let's say, write a book or something like that, or maybe even articles discussing things that they did wrong or that they did correct. So people that weren't involved, because of course, a lot of people are fascinated by history. It's one of the great things about history. You get to study battles, you get to study really incredible things that people have done while you're working on your profession. And so being a part of that, I don't know how much you guys know about Ulysses S. Grant, but after he was president and he traveled around the world, and then he was diagnosed with throat cancer and he was going to die. And then I forget the guy's name, well-known name. It's ridiculous. It's on the tip of my tongue. But anyways, came up to him and said, hey, you should write a book about your experience in the military. And he lost all his money on a bad business deal. So he's about to die. He has no money for his family so they can support themselves when he leaves. And he's like, okay, I guess I'm going to write this. And when you read it, it doesn't even sound like it's being written by somebody who's on their deathbed, but telling the stories because history is so important, not just for people to learn about it, but to inspire those that come after us, to get the people motivated to continue carrying on what everyone, all of us and everyone that have come before us, to continue that legacy, I guess you could say, into the future and to continue the way of life that we have here in America. So sometimes we have to look at it also like, maybe I can add additional value to this and tell people like, hey, this wasn't accurate, but this was. I don't know, just a little addition to it. I'm sure, Doc, you could feel a little bit about that since you're an author.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, you raise a good point, and I think we would all agree with that there is the difference between posterity's sake, like history, and capturing it. And I think we owe that to our future generations, probably our past generations, but we certainly owe that to our future generations. So I don't object to anybody trying to cover down and cover the history in documentaries or fictional stories or whatever it may be. I should make that very clear. But that said, any story, fiction or even nonfiction, requires a suspension of disbelief. Okay, if you're going to set this story in the future, in a distant solar system, and you're going to tell me about a war that happened or a romance that happened over mining asteroids in a very distant solar system, there's certain things you're going to have to do right from the get-go to help me suspend my disbelief. Because it's easy to look at this and go, what the hell are you talking about? It's also, frankly, there are people who don't have this ability. They don't have the ability to suspend disbelief. They look at a television and they see a glass screen and a plastic frame. And then there's lights going on and they don't see those lights and they don't pay attention to the sound. They literally see, oh, the glass screen with the plastic frame is making noise again. Like you would refer to a refrigerator that was making too much noise. And that's all it means to them. Okay. So there's a little bit of that in all of us. And we have to suspend disbelief when we click our remote control and the glass frame with the, glass TV with the electric plastic frame, it lights up, right? It lights up and it starts making noise at us. Or we open a book and we start reading ink that has been spilled onto a page. And you start reading that. And so you have to suspend your disbelief. It has to make some sense at the onset. And lived reality is an antithesis to that. The problem is that you guys lived this. You saw it, you were there, the smells, the sounds, what sucked, what scared the living shit out of you. And good luck, fiction or otherwise, ever capturing that. It's an antithesis to, you can't turn off that suspension of disbelief.
I like that you said that too, about like the smells and certain things that you would only experience if you were there. And I want to say thanks real quick to Johnny up in the comments. He said Mark Twain. It was Mark Twain that came up to Ulysses Grant. And then someone else said Clemens helped Grant write his memoirs. I wasn't familiar with that, but I'll look that up. It seems like another cool fact that's added to that. So I just wanted to give them a shout out.
Clemens is Mark Twain's real name. Samuel Clemens.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. Very interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. Awesome. And yeah, no, because like I thought about that when you said the smell. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like I remember the smell of boot camp. When I went back as a drill instructor, I was like, was this the right idea? Because that smell just made me feel like a recruit again. And then going back to Iraq the second time and just the smell of everything when I got there, I was like, oh boy, this again. So yeah, that's a great thing to point out. And that's why stuff like biographies of people that have been there to me are so fascinating, because they point out these details that you really wouldn't know unless you were there.
Absolutely. Of course, smell is actually more than sight or sound or anything else, or even feel. We're not exactly sure. Some people say it's because of how close the olfactory is to the brain. It's like literally separated by something like, what is that? There we go, get in front of the camera. Like this much space. But for whatever reason, smell is the main instigator of memory. Weirdly enough, it will give you not just draw up memories that you haven't had for 28 years, but it'll draw it up more vividly than any other of your five senses. So there is that smell. But to get back to it, so my father did 3 tours of Southeast Asia, Vietnam, right? And all of my uncles did, and all this other stuff. And they couldn't stand Vietnam movies. They just couldn't stand it. And for the longest time before I joined the military, I thought Dad was just this horrible critic. I just thought he was a terrible movie critic. But he loved, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, World War I movies. He really did. And then later in life, he got really hooked on the global war on terror. I mean, he would watch The Green Zone and ask me, is this a good book? you know, and I'd be like, Dad, I don't know. I don't watch it or read it. And he totally understood. But they couldn't watch Vietnam because that was their war. So I remember after I got back from Korea, this movie had come out called Platoon. While I was out doing essentially the small unit patrols of what Platoon was. I got back and I was like, damn, this is like the most realistic, you know, war flick I think I've ever seen. You know, it was like really good. My dad, unfortunately, he had seen this. One of his like friends had drug him to it, and he's like, holy shit, what garbage make-believe kind of crap was that? And I'm like, what do you got? No, Dad. But his main, like, he had many complaints about it, but his main complaint was that they took a 3,500 man brigade, the problems, rape, murder, you know, defeat, all these things that you would see in a 3,500 man brigade, and they boiled it down to a 32 man platoon, and they put it all in there. And I was like, okay. And I got his complaint about that. I mean, I got his objection. I was like, yeah, most of the viewers, the vast majority of the viewers, are not going to understand that the director did that because you don't have time in 2 hours to learn 3,500 names. But what you do have is just enough time to understand the names, faces, and of the primary movers, those squad leaders and platoon sergeants, the platoon leader, and a couple of motivated privates. And you can start to understand what those warriors experienced in their year-long tour inside of a 2-hour movie about a 30-man, you know, platoon, right? And it was such realistic fiction. The actual last battle, not the others, but the last battle is a real battle involving the 25th Tropic Light Wolfhounds. And so, I mean, so you see all these things, and I was like, Dad, this was at the time, you know, since then I've seen a few that top it, but at the time it was the best war flick I'd ever seen. But he couldn't turn off he just couldn't turn on the suspension of disbelief. He couldn't. He was there. He was there that year. I think he was there that month, and he's like, dude, that's not how it was going down. And so now, all these years later, I get it, because he's asking me about Green Zone and this, that, and the other thing, and movies. I'm like, no, I'm not wasting my time. Just no.
But, you know, in regards to me and like Generation Kill, like that recon element was just in front of Nate and I. I mean, I've seen clips from that show, and but I have yet to watch that from start to finish. And here's the thing, like there's some of the clips I've seen, they have this one character, I think they call him Captain America or whatever, and he jumps out of a Humvee and then just starts spraying from the hip, full auto on an AK, and they just portray him as this complete imbecile. And it really drives me nuts. Now, all jokes about like officers aside, Marine Corps IOC does a fantastic job of producing infantry officers. The Marine Corps actually takes its top guys and makes them infantry officers. Now, I have served with numerous infantry officers in my career, spanning almost 20 years. And there's only one that I can think of that I thought was a subpar infantry officer. All the other ones were, for the most part, very, very well disciplined and very good to go. Chad, can you speak to that at all, man?
I think I know who you're talking about, actually, but
you actually don't. He's from Nate and I's time, but
okay, all right.
Nate, don't name drop, because the guy's out there. He's in the public domain now. So, you know who I'm talking about.
I have no idea.
I'll give you a hint.
I remember you remember that one guy from MAI course, right?
No, I don't. Man, it was so long ago.
All right. Anyway, I digress. What was your question? I went off on a tangent there.
I just, the way they portrayed the Captain America character, it just drove me nuts. It's like they went over the top to emphasize that he was incompetent, buffoon, And I just, man, I can't believe. And this is a recon unit. You know what I mean?
Well,
This isn't some freaking cook unit. This is a recon element. And they got him as a platoon commander. Correct me if I'm wrong, Les, because I know you've watched the show.
Yeah, if you get the DVD set, in the back, they have like a behind the scenes thing, and they interview all the key people. They have Iceman, they have Rudy Reyes and all that, and they speak out against that. They made it clear they had a lot of respect for the captain. He did some things they did not understand, like apparently the shooting up the car incident really happened and stuff. But they said no, they had lots of respect for him, and they were not happy how that was portrayed in the movie. Because I've never read the book, but apparently he gets better treatment in the book.
Okay, so I'm glad you pointed that out. So that right there backs up everything I just said. So that irritates me that that HBO went out of their way to portray this guy like an imbecile, for their story plot instead of portraying it how it actually was. Go ahead, Chad. I know you got some.
Well, I mean, when has Hollywood ever got it right? I mean, they're a nitpick. Even the movies we enjoy, we can make, things here and
Red
there.
Dawn.
All over
They got it right in Red Dawn.
The Longest Day.
Yeah. No disagreement here. But, when I think of bad officers, I actually think of Heartbreak Ridge, the Major Heartbreak Ridge. So that's kind of the stereotype. But I agree with you that FI and infantry officers course, they do a great job of kind of weeding out people who belong there. At least 99.9% of the time.
Major Powers.
Major Powers. Yeah, exactly. We've all had bad officers. We've had bad enlisted higher ups. They're out there. I think Hollywood just sometimes likes to stereotype, and that's kind of what happened. I haven't seen the show personally. I haven't seen any of it, so I can't really speak to that. But I think that those stereotypes are out there, and Hollywood kind of picks up on that, and that may have been what happened in Generation Kill.
There's like, go for it.
I was gonna say, Chad's right. When it comes to anything that is being made in Hollywood, they're there to make money, unless it's, of course, a historical documentary that should be held to a higher standard when it comes to the accuracy. But even something like one of my all-time favorite movies before getting into the Marine Corps was Full Metal Jacket. The boot camp stuff at the beginning, I'm like, this is amazing. And even that's not completely accurate, at least to how it is now, but how it was during that time, if that was accurate. I mean, considering he was a drill instructor, so I'm assuming he was probably giving feedback like, hey, they didn't do this or they did do that. And I'm sure there was times where the producers were like, I'm sorry, but we can't do it your way. That's not going to work for Hollywood. We got to do it this way. We appreciate your input. But in the end, of course, they're trying to sell tickets or sell copies of the movie. So, yeah, there's going to be things that are not always accurate. And that's why, we have books to read about the actual depth of the history, which I want to mention something about this before. I came across a few really good historical docu-series because I think it might have been you, Doc, saying that one of the big problems, or it was Chad, maybe. I forget who it was, but that in a 2-hour time span, that's not enough time. Or was that you, Brent? I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. But a 2-hour time span for a movie is not long enough to give all the details that would be important. So I think that was Doc then, as far as, who was there, who was involved, all the details. That's why these docu-series or even TV shows that they're starting to do on like Netflix and Hulu and things like that, that could provide more of an in-depth story to the details of all the characters. There's a few really good ones for those watching if they want to check out some great historical docu-series. One is Washington. It's on George Washington. It's incredible. There's another one on Grant. That's what inspired me to get his personal memoirs. There's one on all the presidents within the history of the United States. So it's really cool to see each president, what they did, what they were known for, the mistakes they made, the victories that they had, and learning about that. But then it inspires us in the end to go out and research more and learn more about it. Going back when I was a kid and looking at the movie Braveheart, that inspired me to want to do a lot of things. I'm like, oh, Braveheart, William Wallace, this is awesome. Of course, it's not that historically accurate, but there was a level of inspiration. And also that brought a lot of patriotism to people in Scotland. When I was out there about 2 weeks ago talking to the locals, and they're like, yeah, when that came out, I mean, that changed the way so many people felt about the history out here in Scotland. And I know I'm kind of speaking for them, so if I'm off at all, but that's one of the great things about it. It brings it to the surface, and it brings it to the attention of people that may otherwise would never have access to, not access to it, but be aware of it. You know, people that just live in their lives, and then all of a sudden there's this movie that comes out called Midway. What is this movie about Midway all about? I like that movie, by the way. But then they watch and they're like, holy cow, this was fascinating. I had no idea that this operation that was taking place out in Midway after Pearl Harbor was such a big part of history. And then they learn about it. So that's the real value, I think, that comes from these movies and shows that they make on historical military operations.
No, absolutely agreed. That I think it's like, right. I'm saying it's a lot like writing history, that making movies about it. It's easier, honestly. This is going to be very, very sad to say, because there's some trade-off, but it's, as long as your data is halfway decent, it's easier to write history and make movies, historical movies, after everybody's long since in the grave. Give it 80 years, and now you can make movies, because you don't have that generation of veterans saying, that's not the way it was. This is why we, a couple days ago, Les and I were, doing an event, and we got to watch The Lost Battalion of World War I. And, how accurate was it? I'm sure if we had some veterans sitting right beside us, they would set us straight on, not this, not that, but this more so. We didn't have that. But does that mean we somehow valued it less? No, I think we valued it, just tremendously, trying to appreciate what they went through, trying to appreciate the situation of the day, like the politics of the day, the global situation of the day. So, there's all of that. I thought there was another point to be made there, but no, you're right. The point is that once it's gone, you need to collect that data while they're still alive, right? You need that. You need those veterans alive to collect primary source data. But after they're gone, it makes the storytelling more glorious, shinier. And we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of, okay, this is not reality. And because the lived reality is probably way sadder, way more difficult than they can portray. But nonetheless, you can enjoy it. And as there was for many years, let me see, Band of Brothers and Pacific really set the historical community on its ear. They're like, you are making history entertaining. How dare you? But at the same time, look at how many people picked up, books and started reading on World War I and World War II because of Band of Brothers and Pacific. Before them, in the late 80s, early 90s, we had Shelby Foote's PBS series, The Civil War. And once again, it was chastised because it was making the Civil War entertaining, yet it inspired, academics to go into this field of study. So, do you need to take it with a grain of salt? Sure. Is it motivating? Yes. But it's hard to hear about ourselves for many of the reasons that Chad said. It's nice. It's nice that people say thank you, and I try to tip my hat and say thank you, ma'am, thank you, sir. Have a blessed day, something like this. Why? Because it's not about me. It's about them needing to say thank you to one of their warriors. And so, I nod my head, but I'm so compelled to say, I wasn't there alone. Because that's what Hollywood does. Look, when you have 2 hours to tell a story about 30 people, or 2 hours to tell a story about 250,000 people, say something like Saving Private Ryan, right? So you have 2 hours to tell this story. You need to use archetypal characters. That is, archetypes, right? The leader, the follower, the Christian diehard who's going to always be on the morals, and then the slacker. And then you have a coming of age story about the slacker who learns to be disciplined and save his brothers. You need archetypal characters. You truly do. The problem with archetypal characters is that they're two-dimensional. They're a cardboard cutout, dude. They go left and right and up and down. There's no depth to them. And so that's a bit of the problem. And then when you say, and this is where I get really disappointed, is where they say, hey, we want to give depth to this character. They always do the same thing. And I think Brent was getting this. Oh, well, then let's show him to be a dumbass. He's a knuckle-dragging caveman with a grenade launcher because he's in the infantry. I got in the infantry. I tested way out of it. They're trying to stick me into air defense. I said, nope, I want to go where the history is, and that's the infantry. Went in the infantry, got into my very first unit, my fire team leader, E5, all but dissertation in botany from the University of Oregon. All but dissertation. He had finished his testing for his PhD, and he's an E5 in the infantry. We're not too. My point is, we're not two-dimensional. We have depth of character, and so I get why they do it, but it's also a little insulting.
Jump in there, Chad. I know you had some.
I think the main thing to remember is that, you know, you got to be skeptical of everything you see. And I think that I wish more people were like Nate, who had acquired this interest about, you know, the movies they see. Not everybody does, unfortunately. They don't do the research. They don't read up on, you know, two movies that come down for me is U-571, which is completely inaccurate. The Allies got the Enigma machine from the Germans. And The Wind and the Lion, which is an older movie about Morocco with Sean Connery. There's some Marines in it. If you, it's good to check out. It's historically accurate. But you know, I think the telling of a story, you know, we're human beings. We like stories, and it does spark that interest. So there is a positive and a negative. So I say all that to say this. I would encourage everybody watching that if you watch something on TV, do that little extra research. You know, Wikipedia is, you know, sometimes a good source. It's a good source to get other sources, at least academic source by any stretch of the means. But you know, do that extra research and you know, check some of these topics out. You may spark an interest, like that's Grant. So you know, spend that extra time.
Well, I'd say one thing is we talk on the topic of movies and what they get wrong. There are some things they actually do get correctly. And one of the movies I like to point out as being the most accurate is The Longest Day. And one of the fascinating things about there is how far they went to make it accurate. There's a scene in there when the British paratroopers take the Orne River Bridge. And the major, he's taking the bridge. He puts his hand back. The radio man puts the handset and he calls in. He's taking his objective. In real life, the actor playing the major was the radio man. In all the German scenes that are in that movie, not only are they spoken in German with subtitles, the actors playing them were the staff officers of the generals, and the generals that were still alive were the technical advisors on the film. When Lord Lovett comes ashore on Gold Beach, and you see Peter Lawford, one of the Rat Pack, paying him, and he marches ashore and he's got this bright white sweater on and he's carrying a very fine English hunting rifle that was handed to him to play the role by Lord Lovett himself. And as they're marching, Lord Lovett, the actor, has the bagpiper play a Scottish tune on his pipes. That was the bagpiper. I mean, that's the level of accuracy they went to get the film correct. So there's a lot that Hollywood does do. I understand they spent a ton of money recreating all the Rupert devices to drop them down and have the clackers remade, you know, for all the troops to play with their crickets and everything. So, I mean, Hollywood does get it right sometimes. Now, I'm sure a D-Day veteran could tear that movie apart and stuff and would probably hate to watch it, but they did get a lot historically accurate.
Yeah, I want to wrap this up. I don't want to cut you guys short if you got some closing comments, but I want to wrap up this conversation. I want to move into something else. So if any guys got saved rounds on this, go ahead and shoot them out. And then I want to change the topic real quick.
I think we covered a good amount of it. I actually had something I wanted to talk about as well. So I'm good. No save rounds for me. Sorry.
Bills? All right. Here's the next source of conversation. I'm just pulling stuff out of my ass now. I want you guys to tell a story about you getting hazed. We've done nothing but praise the U.S. military. So let's go back in the day because all of us have some time on our belt. Let's talk about getting hazed. And I'm going to go last. And hopefully Nate doesn't have the story that I have. Les, you're first.
We're going to go.
Okay. So getting hazed. Well, the worst part of, being out there in K-Bay and being an air winger. That was the worst. There was a whole half of the base you couldn't go on without taking a ton of shit. That was part of the worst stuff. And then there's the games we all play on each other. Go get me a box of grid squares. Go get an ST1. I need 100 feet of flight line. Although it was fun to get revenge on the grunts when we had them push start 46s. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, and there's so many stories when it comes to getting hazed, especially when your nickname was Shitbag Shomer.
Hey, you said it, not me.
My first year in the Marine Corps, yes, my nickname was Shitbag Shomer. Although it was turned around and I earned the nickname later on, Shit Hot Shomer. So I take the bad with the good. We learn from our hard times. But one story that sticks out in my mind, this was when we were in Kuwait, getting ready to cross the line of departure into Iraq. And we are in our tents. The tents were pretty big. They were decent size, enough to fit an entire platoon, sometimes even 2 platoons. I was in trouble for something. I don't remember what it was. But I remember I was having to sweep the floor with a broom that wasn't even good enough to sweep the floor. So I'm just basically going through the motion. And then later on in the day, my squad leader was still not happy with my performance. And he had me take all the sea bags in the platoon and run them around the platoon, holding them above my head, singing the ABCs and stacking the sea bags in alphabetical order. So I'm running around the platoon with the sea bag above my head going A, B, C, D, getting to the one part and going elemental P, people laughing at me. And I remember I'm running around, I'm doing these laps, and I had one of them over my head. And one of the sergeants said, "Is there anything that your squad leader can do that will change your attitude?" And I said, "No, Sergeant." Although I meant to say yes, Sergeant, it just came out the wrong way. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. Like, I was just a private first class responding, And so then as I was running, the squad leader didn't like my answer to that. And as I was running past him with a sea bag above my head, I got choke slammed. So that was cool. Then I was taken outside of the tent and I'm getting yelled at. I'm in parade rest in a headlock. And all I'm thinking to myself is, I'm about to get punched in the face before crossing the line of departure into Iraq. So nothing happened. I didn't get punched. I just got reprimanded a little bit more, had to do some push-ups, and it was all fine and dandy. But that's one of my favorite stories when it comes to hazing. I hope you guys could top it.
I really can't recall a specific story. I know I've had similar things happen as you guys have already mentioned, but the big ones that I do recall is getting promoted to corporal. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. When you get promoted to corporal, you have to earn your blood stripe. And for those of you watching who don't know what a blood stripe is, for the Marine Corps dress blues, you got a red. When you pick up corporal or you become an NCO, you get that red stripe. You get to put that red stripe on your dress blue pants. Well, before that, usually voted, you're pulled aside by the other NCOs and you're given your blood stripe officially. And basically what they do is, they pin with your rank in your chest, but then they give you a good solid knee strike to your thighs, your outer thighs. And usually the next day Once you've been promoted today, you're not going to PT, you're not going to do anything. Your line sore as hell from your ass kicked by all the NCOs. That's just kind of one of the Marine Corps traditions. I don't think is going away. It will be there always. So you guys can relate.
I don't know. They got rid of becoming a shellback, so you never know.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the blood stripe comes from those that lost their lives during the battle of, how do you pronounce it?
Chapultepec.
Yes,
Chapultepec.
during the Mexican-American.
Chapultepec.
Yep. So that's something that's really cool too about the military uniforms. I know it's like this with the Marine Corps. I'm pretty confident that it's very similar in the other branches, but every piece on our uniforms represents something. It's not just a random piece that's thrown on the uniform. Every little detail means something.
And just so you know, the viewers watching and the non-Marine in here, the significance of that is at the Battle of Chapultepec, all our officers were killed essentially. So guess who picked up and carried on the fight? It was the NCOs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to honor both of those, the losses and
And so that's why the stripe on the pants. Well, that does have significance because in the Army, a stripe on the pants means officer. NCOs and enlisted don't have stripes down their pants, only officers. And a double stripe is different from a single stripe, and we don't need to go into all of that. Well, we'll do that on a, customs and courtesy on another show, I'm sure. But, but I mean, with Chad talking about the blood stripe, we wet our stripes, not to the point, not as refined. Like the Navy has this down pat. Like they know how much. Literally, here's how it goes. Like when you get a promotion in the Navy, and they wet their stripe. If I understand it correctly, I've had several explain this to me. The money you make at this pay grade, and the money you make to the next pay grade, you have to take 1 month's increase and spend that on wetting your stripe. I'm like, holy crap, that is very specific. So we don't have that in the Army, but we still wet our stripe. The blood, we don't do blood rank, we do wet stripe, we do blood wings. And of course, my uncles, my brother, and I all got blood wings, and that is they punch them right into your chest. You've got the dammits that are supposed to go there. No, they pin it into your shirt, and then they go, pow, and they punch you right in the chest. And so you're like, oh, okay. It's just stuck in muscle. But honestly, I can say from blood wings, it doesn't hurt like you think it's going to. It's more that the punch wins you. You're like, ooh, oh my God. He hit me really hard. He's a big guy. All right, so that's blood wings. My hazing, and for the viewing audience that did not go to the military, hazing doesn't happen in basic training or your advanced individual training. It happens when you go to fleet or to your first regiment or whatever it is. It goes when you first get there. And it actually, while it's gone way overboard and like literally gotten people killed and people gone to prison for it, and in very, very rare cases, it can go too far. It actually does serve a purpose. It is to test your mettle, to test what kind of character you are. And so it's not necessarily a one-time deal. And with me, it certainly wasn't. Because I was too thick to get it through my head. So I had the nickname LML in all 4 regiments that I served in, and that stands for Last Minute Larsen, because I had a bad...
How could that be?
It's because I have this thing where everybody knows here, like if your regiment, your regiment formation is 7 a.m, then your battalion formation is 6:30, and your company formation is 6, which means your platoon formation is 5, which means your squad leaders all want you out there 4:30 for a 7 o'clock regimental muster. And so this is the hurry up and wait, which, by the way, literally hurry up and wait in the Army is the acronym for HUA. It is since spelled phonetically, but it used to be spelled HUAW, HUA. So hurry up and wait. So this was where it comes from, and I detested that with great disdain, and I decided that everybody in the Army was wrong, and they just needed to learn to do it the Chris Larsen way. And so I got the nomenclature LML, Last Minute Larsen. So I, in my infinite wisdom, we're going on a 12-mile force march, and I am a machine gunner, brand new to the 1st of the 17th Buffaloes. And I show up to formation right on time because, hey, I don't hurry up and wait. I'm Joe Cool, right? And we start this walk when my platoon sergeant walks up and he says, Larsen, stop. I stop. Platoon sergeant, you know. He's like, spread your legs far apart like you're going to do a jumping jack. All right. So I did. He goes, now bend over. I was like, all right. And he's in front of me. He's like, put your hands down between your knees and yank your head out of your ass. I went. So I'm like, Sergeant? He's like, you going to go on this force march with us? And I got my rucksack, my battle rattle and everything. He's like, where the fuck is your machine gun? And I had not drawn my machine gun from the arms room. And so I hadn't gotten my machine gun out is what I'm saying, is I just figured out I had enough time to do all this and I'd forgotten that. And so I obviously went and got my machine gun out of the arms room real quick and then joined the force march. I went to that. And we got back to the barracks and we lived in something very similar to a Quonset hut. And my squad leader came in there. Holy shit. Now I'm beat. You know, we just did a 12-mile force march, right? And I did it with a machine gun and a rucksack and all this stuff. And he threw me so hard into the wall. He threw me so hard. The back of my legs caught my bunk and the rest of my body flew back into the wall. And where I hit drywall that they had put in these Quonset, you could see the indentation of my head and shoulders in the wall. And so this was my first, no shit, this was my first wall-to-wall counseling. I say it's my first because I got 2 more before I realized, oh, I need to be a little more accountable here. But that's how they did things back then. And again, it served a certain purpose. It was to check your mettle, right? Do you have the intestinal fortitude to be here, be one with us? It's also to get your head screwed on tight and make you pay attention. And by my 3rd wall-to-wall counseling, quite literally, it was that same squad leader, I fought back. And we got in I mean, my God, I've got a, I think he was an E5. And I am not, I'm an E nothing. Dude, there's nothing holding my, my flaps down, right? They just blow in the wind. I'm an E nothing, E1. And he was just pounding on me and I pounded right back because this time I finally decided this is not my fault. Everything else was my fault, not this time. And so I fought back. I bloodied his lip. I bloodied his nose. I bit him. He had bit my finger. And I mean, everything we can. We're just fighting. Everybody got the hell out of this. And they're just like, we're wailing on each other for 20 minutes, pure exhaustion. And I'm furious, but I'm spent. Like I'm shaking so hard because I'm just done. There's like no blood sugar left in me. And he starts laughing. And I'm like, I can't fight him anymore. I can't bite him anymore. But I'm like, fuck you. What are you laughing about? And he's like, we were wondering. And he's laying there too, just breathing. He's done. He's done. He's like, we were all wondering when you'd fight back.
All right. So I guess it's my turn. Well, let me preface this. I am not an advocate of hazing whatsoever. And I'll explain that here in a minute. But Nate and I were hazed quite a bit. We had the same squad leader in OIF 1. And the reason why, I mean, not only me, but the Marine Corps is against hazing. And I'll just say this. The Marine Corps ruined it, if you want to use that term, for everybody. When the recon Marines came out with that video got leaked with the pinning for the wings. I mean, that exposed it to the public and everything. So that's what blew that all up. But if you do pinning, if you do blood striping and get caught in the Marine Corps nowadays, you will get fried. But I'm going to tell you on a personal level why I am absolutely 100% against hazing whatsoever. The squad leader Nate and I had during the invasion and the workup prior to, he hazed us so much, and that even led into combat. He was still doing these stupid games in combat to the point where Nate and I hated this guy. And I am not entirely sure if this guy had been wounded, if Nate and I would have put our lives on the line to save him. I mean, it got that bad. I'm sure we would have, if the situation arose, but this guy was a piece of shit. And I still have that resentment to this day. the way he treated us leading up to this. But I'm just going to go. I'm going to say this is what happened to me. And I left. This is Nate and I were boots during the invasion. But this is back at Camp Horno and Camp Pendleton. And I fucked up. I'll admit it. I left. You get these deployment lists before you go on mobilization. And you got to buy all the stuff on the list, right? And you have inspections. So they were going to let us out early one day to go to the PX to get these items that we had left on our list. So as soon as they said, you guys are free, I beelined it to the PX. And I left. We had our flak and Kevlar and deuce gear staged behind the company formation. I left my gear on the parade deck. Completely forgot about it. Went straight to the PX and got the items on my list. And I got one of those little sandwiches and, the iced teas that are like $1. And I went back to my room and I'm sitting there eating my little sandwich and drink. And about halfway through my sandwich, it clicked on my head. I was like, oh, shit. So I run back down to the parade deck and sure enough, my gear is gone. Well, come to find out, somebody had picked it up. They gave it to my squad leader. So I, my squad leader, I have to go to my squad leader and tell him, and this guy's a Lance Corporal and he's the squad leader, right? And I'm standing at parade rest for this guy. And I had to tell him I left my gear and he's got it the whole time. But he's like, I want you to come up with a punishment. And I'm like, I don't know, Lance Corporal. And he goes, no, I want you to come up with something. He's like, if I was an asshole, I'd make you wear your gear 24/7. Or he's like, I'd make you dummy cord every article of clothing to your body. And then he's like, but I want you to come up with a punishment. So I said, I'll sleep in my gear every night, full flak and Kevlar in my rack. And he's like, you know what? I like that a lot. He's like, you're going to sleep in your gear every night and you're going to dummy cord every article of clothing to your body. And he goes, oh, and you got to make sure that nobody can see it from the outside. So I had to wear a base layer dummy cord around my waist and running from that base layer all the way down my leg on each side to my socks. I had to cut holes in my socks, had to cut a hole in my underwear and skivvy shirt, the whole 9 yards. Everything had to be dummy corded, but you couldn't see it from the outside. Wonder why, right? And every night I was sleeping full flak and Kevlar with my, we had OBEs at the time as well. So I'm wearing flak Kevlar and OBE in my rack. And then we started doing our workup going on ship for like a week at a time. And I'm 6'2". It's hard enough to fit in those Navy racks, by myself already. Imagine doing it with flak Kevlar. So on ship, I was still doing that. And that lasted for 2 to 3 months, I think. I can't remember how long it lasted, but that's only one instance of that. Nate and I could talk stories. Yeah, Nate missed shaving one day, and he and I had to shave every hour on the hour in front of our squad leader. So, but I will tell you this, like I said, I'm 100% against hazing. I never left my gear on a pre-deck ever again. But I can't stress you enough. Like this guy was, and still to this day in my mind, he's the epitome of what not to be when it comes to leadership.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And yeah, I was about to say, I don't know how long you had to dummy cord everything to yourself, because I remember that being a never ending thing. Like every day I'd see you and you're still dummy cording everything. I'm like, man, how long is this going to continue? And the worst part about it was you were always shit hot downing. Like you were never shit bag. You know what I mean? Like I understand the hazing that I received. It was well deserved. But like you were always a good Marine. You never faltered. You were always at the top. So I want to
say too, at least in the beginning stages before we got to Kuwait, I was Nate's team leader, and we were junior Marines. So anytime Nate messed up, and he messed up often, I paid for him too. So didn't matter how shit hot I was.
Sorry about that. I think we even made jokes about it. We're like, we're going to be the best at skinning potatoes. I mean, we never did that, but that's something people think is part of hazing. And I agree too with the whole, like, hazing is not something that should be done. However, Some of the stuff I do like. So what I mean by that is what Chad was talking about, getting the blood stripes, even though it's something that is not supposed to be done. The way I looked at me getting my blood stripes and getting my rank slammed into my chest, that to me was being welcomed into the rank of non-commissioned officer. I was being welcomed by now my peers who were before senior to me, and they're saying, hey, you earn it, come on in, this is the initiation, but we're happy to have you a part of the team. You know who doesn't get that? The ones they don't like, they don't trust, and they don't want to be in that. At least that's how it was back when we were in. I'm sure a lot of it, like the hammer has been dropped a little bit harder, so not as much of that is taking place. But that type of hazing I thought was great, personally. The hazing I didn't like was the dummy courting everything, having to stay up all night because of some insignificant thing that took place during the day, taking apart and cleaning the weapon all day because there's nothing else to do. Really, we could have been doing gun drills. We could have been doing studying our nomenclature. We could have been doing so many other things. So when the hazing interrupts the training and the proficiency of the unit, that's what I have the biggest problem of. And something that's important too, like this even goes with parents. I'm not a parent, but it's like you're not raising kids, you're raising future adults. You're not working with privates, you're working with future sergeants, future staff sergeants, future commanding officers. If you think they're not going to remember the dumb shit you did to them, you're out of your mind. Of course they're going to remember it, and they're going to have judgment based on those actions that you took. Just like how I still feel to this day that he was a horrible leader. He wasn't a leader. He caused a lot of issues and caused a lot of conflict within the unit that could have otherwise been avoided. And instead of creating conflict, could have created unity through better leadership.
And might I add, after that first deployment, he got busted down to PFC while Nate and I became NCOs. So
yes, he did. And speaking of, if you don't mind, Brent, the thing that I want to do, since I'm sure, actually, I'm confident that you have a lot of viewers that are really interested in the military or sincerely considering signing up. So from the 5 guys we have here right now, all of you have experience working with junior Marines, being a junior Marine soldier, but what type of advice would you give to somebody who's considering joining the military to make sure that that military career that they have is a success, not only a success, but also something that they look back fondly, or they do what you did, Downey, and they make it a life commitment serving their country? What advice would you guys give? And I'd say let's start with Brent and work our way through.
I'm going to kick it over to Chad because he seems really excited. So we'll go to him, and then we'll go clockwise from there.
That sounds good.
I got on this. I have something to say. Do not sign up for the GI Bill benefits only. If that's your only reason for going in the military, you're going to ruin it for a lot of people, because you're going to you're not going to belong there. And sometimes people get promoted when they shouldn't. You may rise to a rank, fine, but you may not be ready to assume that billet. Sign up just for college benefits. It's bigger than that. The commitment is much, much bigger than that. So if that's your reason for going in, do not do it. It's not you.
And I can second that, because after my time in the Marine Corps, I got a lobotomy and served in the National Guard. And we had people there that were just for the college benefits. And due to the jacked up promotion system, you had guys that came out of Desert Storm with combat decorations, myself included, that couldn't be promoted. But the guys with they were getting their college points, as my company CO goes, couldn't be prevented from being promoted. And the hate and discontent it caused in the unit was off the scale. I mean, Chad, you are spot on about that.
I mean, it's nice to have those benefits. It's an addition, but like I said, you have to want it. You have to want it bad, not just, the college benefits, but you have to want to be what you're going to be, whether it be an airman, sailor, Marine, soldier, coastie, whatever it is, or whatever they're called, Space Force guy. And I don't think we've even mentioned that. You have to want it. You have to want it bad. And just going in for the college benefits, you're going to ruin it for yourself and a lot of people.
Yeah, and I would actually agree with that, because you do need to, it is something that is a full commitment. I mean, you know, my current profession, Brent mentioned it earlier. I am a professional dog trainer. I train dogs. I love it. I teach people how to train dogs. But being a dog trainer, often I'll have people that are interested in being a dog trainer and they just want to hang out with puppies. And I tell them, like, you have to love being a dog trainer. You have to be so obsessed by the idea of being a dog trainer that it consumes every moment that you have during the day. And if you're not at that level, you're not going to be successful because it takes that sort of commitment. And it's the same thing with the military. When you go into the military, it's a full commitment. You are signing your life over for those first 4 years, or if you're going commissioned as an officer, it's going to be a little different, but you're making a serious commitment. And it is a very serious profession. So it is something that we do, some of us for 4 years, some for 8, some for 20, some for 30. But it's a very serious occupation that should be taken that way. And if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you're not going to be successful, like Chad said. You're going to end up having discontent, or you're going to be disgruntled about your experiences, because you're going to be very similar to how I was the first year. You're going to be shitbag, put your name, shitbag blank. And I'm telling you firsthand experience, being the shitbag is not a fun experience. You definitely don't want to be the shitbag. But if
or the shitbag's team leader.
But if you want to do it for a college education and you also want to serve your country, then it is a great option. But yeah, you don't want to do it for the wrong reason. So just to bounce off what Chad said.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, put my 2 cents. It's nothing fundamentally different than anybody else said. Look, if you're trying to get out of the inner city, if you're trying to get away from a bad family, if your family is a legacy family and you're serving because, you know, you have a long heritage, if you're going for the college funds, if you're bored and you don't have a good job and you don't want to flip burgers, there's not really, I'd be hard pressed to find a bad reason to join the military. But I can say this, if your number one reason, like the one at the very top of it, isn't to serve my nation, don't sign. Go do something else. I'm not telling you your other reasons are bad, but I'm saying push is going to come to shove. And you're going to be standing there one time where the C-130s pull up and they pull concertina wire around the phones and they bring in the MPs with dogs, and you're going to realize, oh shit, I'm being deployed right in the middle of peacetime, and every choice, every decision you've made isn't going to make sense unless you have committed yourself to serving your nation. And that's an incredible sacrifice. You are signing your name on a check to Uncle Sam, and it's made out for up to and including my life. And I know that's dramatic, but I'm saying you've got to make your peace with that before you enlist. And once you do, then my advice to you is twofold. First and foremost, become a warrior scholar. Your career will excel, and you will do very well if you commit to being a scholarly pursuit of your job. That's one thing. And the second thing is to remember this. It's called a uniform because it's uniformity. All your shit looks like everybody else's shit, right? And every time you change regiments, no one knows you from anybody else. So the night before I left, my father pulled me aside and said, look, here's how you do. Every time you go to a school, you get PCS to a new regiment. Every time you keep your mouth shut, you keep your eyes and ears open, and you keep your back against the wall for 30 days. Let people think that you are a mute dumbass. You keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut and back against the wall. Figure out who's who in the zoo. Who is it you want to associate with? Who is it you don't want to associate with? Because birds of the feather flock together. And if you're going to be that warrior scholar, you need to find other ones. And you don't ask. You let them tell you who they are. They will. I'm telling you, that is what made me successful, even with all my flaws, and there are many. That's what made me successful in every regiment I served in.
So now let's consider that they decided they're going to sign, they're going to swear their oath, and they're going to go into the military. What advice would everyone have? And I've been reading some of the comments off to the side. Believe it or not, one of my subscribers is here. Let me scroll down. Where is he at?
It's Santiago. Believe it, he's
Santiago. Yeah. And then someone else mentioned Thomas Paine, and I'm actually reading his book right now on common sense, that was published during the Revolutionary War, or I think it might have been right before the Revolutionary War. I'm not sure. But yeah, that really changed the perspective of a lot of patriots. So I like that somebody mentioned that. But yeah, let's now talk about the people that they're ready to sign up. They want to join. What advice can we give to them that would help make them successful? I want to go last. I'm going to talk about the boot camp side because I was a drill instructor before I got out. So that's actually most fresh in my mind. But from the infantry side, where you guys were serving, what advice would you give to somebody who's just now getting to the fleet, whether or not they were shipbag in School of Infantry, shipbag in boot camp, whatever their past was, they're stepping into the fleet. What is the best course of action they can take to be successful, to get promoted, to be put on meritorious boards, and to be, in the end, that quote-unquote golden child, which this is something I used to tell my recruits. If anybody says, oh, yeah, you're just kissing ass to move up, what I say to those people is that they're lazy asses and they don't want to work hard. Work hard, be committed, get promoted, and then all the other ones that are saying that you're an ass kisser, well, you're the one getting promoted, taking charge, and being put in positions of more responsibility and leadership to continue developing those underneath you as well as your own character. So you want to start, Brent?
Yeah, we'll go counterclockwise. Let's go to Les, and then I'll pick up after him.
All right. I would say if you've completed your schools and you're in the fleet, the first things you want to do is be good at being a Marine. You know, regardless of what your MOS is, make sure your rifle score's up there. Make sure your PT's up to snuff. Make sure you're doing your essential skills, or whatever they call them now, that you're good on that stuff. And be the best you can and show the respect to your seniors. You know, one of the things I used to jump on my Marines, like I had lieutenants. I didn't have any fucking LTs. You know, I made sure that we honored that rank. And by putting my officers in a position where showing them the respect as an NCO, you know, that put in my Marines that, hey, this is the standard you have to meet. And as you get into a unit, you know, find out the way the unit does things. You're either brand new coming out of your school and you learned what school has, and no unit does it the way school taught you. Learn their way. And the next thing is, if you've been in long enough to get to another unit, don't forget what you learned at the previous unit, but respect what the unit you're going to does.
Oh, sorry, got me. I was trying to do a private message. All right. Yeah, I'll answer this question, but I also want to go back to the previous thing. Hey, I've said this before on another live stream. Do not join the U.S. military unless you are ready to go to war. I just saw on the news that the Chinese are building a mock fleet right now of American warships. And I am telling you, this threat is so serious that the Marine Corps is completely revamped to meet this coming threat. And we even had a whole live stream about the growing Chinese threat and how, you know, this is potentially going to be the next fight. The next fight will be against a pure threat. We've gotten conditioned to fighting people that do not have the same capabilities as us. Do not go into the U.S. military unless you are ready for war, because the last thing we need are deserters and people that aren't mentally prepared for us, because this is going to be something along the lines of what we saw during World War II. So that is my advice to anybody considering going into service. If your heart isn't in it 100%, don't even fucking sign on a dotted line. And I know some recruiters are hating me right now. but just to piggyback on what the other guy said, do not go in for the benefits, because if you're going in the U.S. military for the benefits, you're in the wrong business, son. You were in the wrong business. So,
and to piggyback on what you're saying there too, Brent, come in prepared for war and realize the one you're prepared for is the one that might not happen. In my enlistment, we had frequent wind. We had Panama. We had Desert Storm. That was never what we trained for. We trained to stop hordes of Russians coming either into Norway as Marines or coming into the Asia Pacific theater. We didn't train to go fight Iraqis in a desert. We didn't train to fight Panamanians or take oil rigs back from Iranians, but that's what we end up doing. So not only be prepared for war, but semper gumby, be flexible.
Because your generation, you and Chris's generation, was prepared for that fight, though, it never happened. So that's what we need to do now. And I know I'm not even looking at the comment section, but I'm sure there's some Yahoo that's commenting about woke this, woke that. The Marine Corps can't handle this, that, and the other. My war fighters in my unit are ready to freaking slay bodies. And that is the 100% hard fact. And I saw some fucking news article the other day about U.S. Marines got spanked by British Royal Marines and stuff like that. Once you look into that exercise, the British Royal Marines were one component of a whole conglomeration of other units that were part of that Op 4. There were Marines on the Op 4 side with the Royal Marines. And I will tell you that Royal Marines are superb warfighters. I've trained with them. I've actually gone to the UK in a little exchange program for 2 weeks and went and trained with the Royal Marines. They're superb warfighters. And all I can say is, in addition to the Royal Marines serving along other Marines in that same exercise, along with like Dutch Marines and Canadians, steel hardens steel. And we should be doing force on force, because that is the best possible training you can do. So my advice to a young Marine or young soldier coming up is stay motivated, stay fit, and be the best you can be. Because I watched a young shitbag Shomer. All of a sudden, one day he said, and this is no bullshit, he was shitbag Shomer. This is no bullshit. He said to me, he said, Brent, he's like, I'm tired of being the shitbag. I'm going to be shit hot. And that next day, I'm telling you, that dude could do no wrong. And I'm telling you, like 3 months later, he was on a meritorious promotion board and got promoted meritoriously to corporal. He got promoted to corporal before all of us. And that is the God honest truth. So that is my advice. So I'm kicking it over to Doc.
Okay, so once you're in, you've made the commitment. You've gone through all your initial training and your advanced training, and you guys say colloquially, you get to fleet. We say you get to regiment. Okay. Then I would say the way to be successful, I've already mentioned, be a scholar. Seriously, start with your unit history. You're in a regiment, damn it. Figure out what your regiment is known for. Figure out who the main players are. Figure out who the Medal of Honor winners are. So be a scholar. Beyond that, here's a secret to success. And it sounds very simple, but it's not. Figure out what kind of followers you want. When you're privating nothing, figure out what kind of followers you want on your team and be that follower. When you finally get promoted because someone figures out you've got 2 brain cells worth rubbing together, then you'll be a leader. You'll be a fire team leader. Figure out what kind of leader you want to follow and be that leader. I think for me, the medals, nope. The war stories, lots of fun. The greatest compliment I ever got, and I got it on a handful of occasions, were people coming to me and saying, Sergeant Larsen, when your squad gets an opening, I'd like to work with you. Because I was being the kind of leader that I wanted people to be for me. And before I did that, I made sure I was the kind of follower that I wanted. It's a narrow line to walk, but find it and walk it.
Yeah, that's good. I definitely agree with all that. I would say three things to practice to be a risk taker. You got to stand out in some way, shape, or form. I think today's military leadership, for the most part, there's an aversion to taking huge amounts of risks. Because especially with other men's lives. But as a combat leader, that's something you're going to have to do. So you might as well start early. Take risks, step up, take initiative. You see something going wrong, you see something not being done, just do it. NCOs and higher ups love seeing that stuff. The last and most important thing I would say is look out for your subordinates, not your career. In the military, you're going to meet what's called a careerist, and that goes as well. But person, one of the leadership traits of the Marine Corps is know your Marines welfare. You'll learn the leadership principles, but that's one that is the most important one. Look out for your fellows as well, not just your subordinates, and take care of them.
And now to talk about boot camp. So the first thing you're going to do, if you sign up, you're going to go to boot camp. Now, of course, I can't talk for the other branches, but I can talk about the Marine Corps. I don't know how much has changed in the past 10 years. Besides the obvious, of course, learn your general orders, have those memorized, learn how to report your post, all these little things, of course, that you need to learn. But the big piece of advice that I would give for people that are going in, one, don't show weakness to your drill instructors. Weakness is like adding fuel to the fire, baby. The moment I saw a recruit on the verge of crying, oh yeah, I'm going for that. I used to actually tell my drill instructors when I was a senior, I said, if you can make a recruit cry, I'll let you go home for the rest of the day. So you don't want to show weakness. Act like getting IT'd, act like you fucking love it. Getting IT'd should be the best thing in the world for you. You should get so motivated and pumped about getting IT'd. Guess what? They're not going to want to IT you. They want to IT the recruits that are like, Those are the ones that are fun to slay, not the one that's loving it. So act like you love it. In fact, my first senior cycle, I told my recruits, I said, if you're getting IT'd, you're getting stronger. If you're getting yelled at, we're making you better. If you're having to run back and forth, well, you're ready if you're ever gassed out in combat. We are preparing you for war, and all this is making you stronger. So fucking love it. And I was pumping my platoon up. Well, my J, he actually came up to me later. He's like, dude, I can't even threaten the platoon to IT him because they love it because of all this shit you said. And because that's as in Marine Corps boot camp, I don't know if it's changed, but only the senior drill instructor can IT the whole platoon. So I used to tell a platoon, if I'm ITing you guys, I'm making you stronger so we can slay everybody else. This is fuel for the fire. You need to love this stuff. So that's a big thing. Try to be the squad leader. Try to be the guide. You're not going to want to pound on the hatch at 04:45 in the morning saying the time on deck is 04:45, sir. You're not going to want to do that. But these are the things that are going to make you stand out to the drill instructors. And even if you may think, all right, well, if they recognize me, I'm going to get IT'd more. They're going to slay me more. Not really. Because my squad leaders that were good as a drill instructor, my guides, the people who are trying to be the guide, who are working the Brent Downies of the platoon, I would talk to my other drill instructors. And if I had a recruit motivated first sergeant Downing, if I had a recruit like him, I'd be like, all right, we need to make sure we use him to help motivate the other recruits. This guy is on it. That's what we want. That's what we seek. And it's not going to make your life harder. In the end, it's going to make your life better. And you might end up getting meritoriously promoted as well. But to bounce off what some of the other guys said too, I think Chad said it, put yourself out there. Don't be worried about messing it up. Everybody messes up, even all the way to our first president of the United States. I mentioned him earlier. You think he was ready to take on this Revolutionary War? I mean, think about the cost if he lost. He would have been marked a traitor. He would have been hung. Like all these things would have happened, and he still did it because he had that certain amount of self-respect, but respect for what he was doing. So same thing. Don't be afraid of getting IT. Love it. And here's another piece of advice too. You can't be IT forever. IT is intensive training, or also known as incentive training. Push-ups, crunches, side straddle hops, all these things. They can only do it for a certain amount of time. They can't do it forever. There's a time limit on that. So there's rules to everything. Understand that too, and that's going to make you feel more confident to do certain things to stand out and be better. But your goal should be to be the guide, not to be the guy hiding in the background, hoping that the drill instructor doesn't know his name. That's what I did, and I honestly regret it. I would even tell my recruits that. It's like, I didn't lie to my recruits and say, yeah, I was a squad leader, because I wasn't. I tried to hide. The drill instructor would say, what's your name? And I would go, Recruit Chandler, sir. And he'd be like, what? And I would try to intentionally say my name wrong so he wouldn't remember it. That was the stupid mentality that I had at the time. No, be confident with your name. Yell it out. Try to take charge. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to get IT'd. Who cares? We go to the gym anyways to get ready for boot camp. So that's my biggest piece of advice going in. Of course, learn the stuff you have to learn, but don't be afraid of standing out. That's what your goal should be. Stand out, take charge, try to be a leader. And if others try to put you down, your peers, because the hardest thing to do is to lead your peers. That's one of the hardest things to do. And you're going to get attacked for trying to do that. Stand your ground and remember that this is stuff that you're going to look back on when you're 37 doing a podcast with your buddies with a goatee that has gray hair coming in. So remember that, because it's going to make a difference for sure. And that's my advice. I hope that was worthwhile.
All right, so we're at the 2-hour mark. I want to start closing this up because I think we've had some good conversation. I want to end on a good note. I'm going to take my executive privilege here, being the channel creator, and say I'm going to go last on this. But I'm going to kick it back counterclockwise, going over to, clockwise, go back to Les, and then this is just final statements. Whatever you want to talk about. If you want to talk about your own YouTube channel, whatever the hell. If you want to talk about anything we've discussed or anything on your mind, go ahead and say your piece. And this is our final round robin before we close this live stream. So kicking it over to you, Les.
Well, we covered a great number of topics tonight. So the first thing, in 2 days, happy birthday to my fellow Marines. Next thing is, war movies are great. I mean, let's be honest. None of us would have gotten into the military without them. There's good ones. There's bad ones. Enjoy them for what they are. If you're a young man and you're considering going into the service, take the advice you've heard tonight. Go in, be prepared for war, and enjoy the benefits you get from serving, but don't go in for the benefits. As Nate said, it's not good for you. It's not good for those around you. But service to your country is an important thing. I know it's a little cliche thanks to Starship Troopers, but I think service does give you an up on citizenship over the average person. And that, everybody should consider it. You may come to the conclusion it's not for you, but as long as you've considered it and thought it through, you've still done your duty in some respect. Nate?
That was great. And, at first I want to say, Brent, I appreciate you inviting me on to this. This has been really incredible for me. One of my favorite things to do is to get with a bunch of other Marines, have a couple drinks, and talk war stories. I mean, such a great
soldier.
You know what? It's like we said before, anyone who served in the military, I am a fan of, because you were able to do something outside of yourself. Even though, of course, joining the military does benefit ourselves as well, it is still, an act of devoting a portion of your life to the country. But since Brent said I can promote my own channel, for those of you that are out there that have dogs, you've seen a couple of my dogs jump up. They've been hanging out with me. I have a Belgian Malinois, Ari. She's my little rock star. You can see her on my channel. And then the one that jumped up earlier that looked a little bit like a Vizsla, he gets that all the time. People think he's a Vizsla, but he's a fox red British lab. He's a little dopey. I didn't commit as much time to training him as I did with Ari, so she's more of the rock star. But after I got out of the Marine Corps, I was involved in post-production. I did computer graphics in Hollywood for about 2 years, and sitting behind a desk all day just wasn't for me. And one of my good friends that I went to high school with was a professional dog trainer, still invited me down. I spent 3 weeks at his facility, and I loved it. I was just in absolute awe at what they were able to do with these dogs, the transformations they were able to make. He was also involved with the rescue and then working with people and the dogs. So to me, it just made a lot of sense. I went back to California and I thought about it and I said, you know what? I want to be a dog trainer. So I took my buddy's advice. He recommended the Tom Rose School for Professional Dog Trainers. I went there, graduated top of my class, professional and master program. And then I was invited back to be an instructor. After that, Brent mentioned it for a brief moment, but I did a show with Animal Planet, which was quite an honor for me. We were training dogs from shelters to be service dogs. It was called Rescue Dog to Super Dog. You could still look it up. So that was a really exciting time in my life. And then I started a YouTube channel following Brent's lead. I remember looking at his channel and seeing that he posted a video that he was doing an interview with someone else. And they're like, you know, you're almost like a celebrity now. And of course, Downing, being humble as he is, he's like, I don't know about all that. Maybe C-list, I guess you could say. But at that point, he had like 125,000 subscribers, and I was really impressed by that. And I also thought to myself, if that motivator can do it, I can do it. So then I started my YouTube channel and tried following in his footsteps with that and growing that. But at the same time, you know, Brent's channel, sharing his knowledge, his passion, his wisdom about the military, mine was all directed towards dog training. So if you want to be a dog trainer, if you have a dog that you want to train, if you've been struggling with some obedience, check out my channel. It's Nate Schomer. It's just my name, Nate Schomer. I have over 150 videos, and I have a dog training manual to bounce off what Doc said. I'm working on my second book right now, How to Start Your Own Successful Dog Training Business. So for those dog lovers out there, I would appreciate it if you check out the channel and let me know what you think. That's all I got.
All right, good stuff. Enjoyed this hour with you guys. I learned a little bit myself, so that's always a good thing. But what I want to end with is I know that the Marine Corps birthday is coming up, but it's also going to be Veterans Day, something we didn't really get to. And I'd like to, if I may, end with a reading of the resolution passed June 4th, 1926, from the Congress in regards to Veterans Day, the creation of Veterans Day initially. Which was actually the Armistice Day at the end of World War I, if that's how it initially began. But I want to read this real quick because it really kind of, I guess, culminates everything that we've been talking about, especially with the war movies and how we feel when people think us for service and everything. But real quick, whereas the 11th of November 1918 marked the cessation of the most destructive, sanguinary, and far-reaching war in human annals, and the resumption by the people of the United States of peaceful relations with other nations, which we hope may never again be said. And whereas it is fitting that the reoccurring anniversary of this date should be commemorated with thanksgiving and prayer and exercises designated to prepare peace through goodwill and mutual understanding between nations. And whereas the legislatures of the 27th of our states have already declared November 11th to be a legal holiday, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate, the House of Representatives concurring, that the President of the United States is requested to issue a proclamation calling upon the officials to display the flag of the United States on all government buildings on November 11th, and inviting the people of the United States to observe the day in churches or other suitable places where appropriate ceremonies of friendly relations with all other people. So basically, what I want to end with that is I want to say thank you to all you gentlemen for your service. I know that we sometimes get embarrassed when we say that, but I truly revere the veteran, and he does hold, he and she holds a special status in our society. And having a day set aside for that, we have 3 days for that. We have Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and Armed Forces Day. And most people don't know about Armed Forces Day, but it is out there. But Veterans Day is important because it's everybody. It's those who have died, those who have served, and those who are continuing to serve. So it encompasses everybody. So I would, again, gentlemen, thank you for your service, and to all you veterans out there, Thank you for signing the dotted line and protecting freedoms.
All right.
Yeah, well said, Chad. Let me reiterate that with Veterans Day coming up, I do also want to reiterate, thank you all, men and women, for your service. And you're right, Chad. There is something unique, and there's just a wonderful quality about a veteran. So that said, I also need to say happy birthday to the Marines. And I mean this sincerely. The soldiers and all of us, we like to poke fun at each other, and certainly I will admit readily that soldiers hold sailors in some esteem. We do, because you guys know how to swim, and we don't. And I would say that to the Air Force, you guys know how to hold a margarita, and you look magnificent doing it. To the Marines. To the Marines. And I mean it, like, we're jealous. Like, the soldiers are genuinely jealous of the treatment of the Air Force to their airmen. Like, they really take care of themselves. And sailors are genuinely professional. I mean that. I'm pretty damn impressed with their school and their education system. They're genuinely professional. To the Marines, every soldier is always going to be jealous because you guys look fan-friggin-tastic in that uniform. God dang it! Why did we get such an ugly uniform, you bastards? But we have that, and I'll go you one farther. I've never met a Marine. Well, let me hold on before I roll that dice. I'll say this though. I think the Marines have been the ones that hold the line, and I mean this. They've been holding the line with training, with preparedness, with getting past all of. I won't go political, but I will say that there's clearly a Marxist woke agenda, even if it's not prevalent. Even if you say, oh, it's a minority group, that's fine. But at least you recognize there really is such a thing. And Marines have done such a better job than their sister services, and certainly better job than the Army, about doing this. And they've done it in a very academic way. And so I do want to say that that Marines have always struck me as a professional group with an incredibly, enviably high esprit de corps. And so happy birthday to you all. I mean that sincerely. And, and no soldier is going to, we're not going to do the things that Marines do. We're not going to thump our chest and go, it's an Army birthday, because the Army doesn't have birthdays. Only then I found out someone said, no, we do have a birthday. And I was like, wait, are you kidding me? We have a birthday? They're like, yeah, I think it's in June or April or something like that. Turns out no one in the Army knows when the birthday is, unless you're in the Pentagon. So it turns out to be something akin to like a stage party after a movie. Like, all the cast goes out and they have this big party, and they didn't tell the rest of us. So we don't like the Army, but we love our regiments, and I can understand why every Marine is proud to be in the Marine, because let's be honest, you're just one great big regiment. All right. Having said that, I'll turn over
jealousy showing through, Doc.
Totally. Damn it. I want a blue uniform. Oh, well, not the one we have. It looks like an ice cream truck salesman.
Well, let me just say, guys, this has been a fantastic live stream, and I really appreciate having you guys on. Nate and Chad, they represent two periods in my life that, I mean, are just completely different. One 4 on active duty, and Chad in 123 reserve, and both of those guys were groomsmen in my wedding. I mean, that's how much I value their friendship, and they've just been fantastic. And Les and Doc, I've gotten to know you guys more intimately over the last few years, and you guys are fantastic. And I hope one day that we can all just rejoice together in some high quality training at One Shepherd and get back to slaying enemy bodies. But let me just close by saying that my service has completely shaped my life. It has put me and oriented me in the right direction my whole life. And that's why I've continued to serve, whether that be on active duty or the reserves. It has set me up for success. And I just want to close by saying to my counterpart in communist China, whatever the hell their first sergeant rank is called, we're ready for you. So if that day comes, we're ready for you. So that's all I have. And God bless all the veterans out there. We just celebrated our 246th Marine Corps birthday ball, and I got the privilege and distinct honor of meeting. It was co-hosted with the Marine Corps League, and there are numerous veterans there from Vietnam. And one of them in particular was a veteran of Quezon, and another one was a Navy corpsman that served in 68. And man, just incredible guys. And our legacy lives through them and continues with us. So thanks again, fellas. And we're going to close that out. And to my devil dogs in the room, happy birthday, Marines.
Happy birthday.
Hurrah.